was born in 1948, August the 19th, and I was given the name of Lulie McKinley Jones. A funny story is that's not the name that was put on the birth certificate because my dad didn't particularly like my mother's mother, whose name was Lulie. So he put Louise on the birth certificate, but I didn't find out till I was 16 years old. But I had an older brother that was 1 year and 2 weeks older, and then I had two younger sisters. My mom had all four of us in 5 years' time. So you can imagine that the house was pretty crazy. We lived in a small town, Sweetwater, Tennessee, which is right at the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. My grandmother lived 2 blocks away. That was my father's mother, and aunts and uncles all around us. And so I grew up with 11 cousins, or all total there were 11 cousins. And so we did a lot of family gatherings. And my father walked to work. He was only 2 blocks from the Sweetwater hosiery mill, which our family had started. Everything was close. There were only about 4,000 people in the town. So I had a great childhood. I loved all my cousins. I loved all my aunts and uncles. Went to Sweetwater High School, which only had like 90, there were 90 students in my graduating class. That was about right. And I was salutatorian. I was second in the class. Proud of that fact. And then I kind of wrap it up right there because it was my senior year in high school that I met Herbert, my husband, and the father of my children, and the grandfather of our grandchildren, and I'll let him kind of tell a little about himself now.
Well, I'm Herbert Holden Thomas III because my dad is Dr. Herbert Holden Thomas, and he would be the second. And then his father was a doctor, Herbert Holden Thomas, and he was a doctor that died in 1918 fighting the Spanish flu. He had been helping all these people for 3 weeks before it overcame him, but a lot of people died back then. That's really what brought me to where I was born, which is Birmingham, Alabama, and my dad was a gynecologist, obstetrician, and was practicing there. I was the middle child. My older sister, Carolyn, is 2 years older. My younger sister, Mary Foy, is 4 years younger. Really lived in Mountain Brook, went to Mountain Brook Elementary School, Crestline Elementary School, then went to the middle school, and then went to Indian Springs, which is a high-powered private school that really, I was into sports a lot of baseball, basketball, not too much football, but tennis, golf. And but during this time, my parents would go to Sweetwater, Tennessee to see their friend from the Army, Dr. Hurer, who in Sweetwater, for the Alabama-Tennessee game, and would run into Lulie's parents. And they did that for 20, 30 years, and then they would come down to Birmingham because Lulie's mother grew up in Birmingham, and it would be the same group there. And so that was how essentially we ended up meeting, because when I went to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, Lulie's older brother, Sam, did too at the same time. And so that was really, the two mothers said, hey, why don't y'all get to know each other? And I didn't really want to. I didn't know who's this Sam Jones from Sweetwater, Tennessee. And so, but we ended up running into each other at what you would be like the Texas A&M fish camp. For the week, the out-of-staters coming together. We played ping pong, and sat down. And I said, we had a really great game. We've always had great games of ping pong. And he said, I said, well, what's your name? He said, Sam Jones. And I said, Sam Jones? He plays for the Boston Celtics. That's Sam Jones? He said, no, I'm from Sweetwater, Tennessee. And I mean, well, the odds of that are 1 trillion to 1, but we became best friends for 4 years.
I was a senior in high school, and it was Christmas, I think. I had gone down with my mom and to Birmingham, and my brother Sam had set up a blind date for Herb and me to meet. And I think we actually met at my great aunt's home.
Up on Cliff Road.
Up on Cliff Road.
You were in high school.
Yeah, senior year in
and
high
I
school.
was a freshman in college.
Yeah, so I'll let him take it from there because he loves telling this story.
Well, Sam, who we got good bit friends, so I'm from Birmingham. This is during Christmas break, and he gets me a date with his little sister. We get in the car, go up on the Cliff Road to pick her up, and she comes out. It was just like, it's probably an old movie for anybody to understand, but it's called, what was it called?
I don't know, Dustin Hoffman and Catherine Ross. But I don't remember.
What?
The Graduate.
The Graduate. When she came out, it was just like when Dustin Hoffman saw Catherine Ross went out. I saw this blonde girl who was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I immediately fell in love. I mean, I haven't stopped since then. Now, we've been married 45 years, but I was always in love with her from that moment on. We kind of just did things for the next 2 years, right? But it was just whenever we were around Sam, then I would be with you, and whether or not we went to the beach or we went to the cloisters that time. So I was in love with her, but she was, she was going through college, I was going through college. She was down in Atlanta, Georgia at Emory, and I was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So you want to pick it up from there?
Well, my freshman and sophomore year in college, we would see each other. I would visit Sam at North Carolina, and Herb would always be my date. And then when they came to Atlanta to see me, Herb would always come with Sam. So we really developed like a Three Musketeers kind of relationship. It was the three of us, and we did so many things together. And so that added I guess, a special element to it in the fact that Sam was pretty much one of my best friends, and Herb was his best friend. So for 2 years during those times together, we always had really a whole lot of fun. We would not only meet in Chapel Hill or Atlanta, but also in the summers. We would go to St. Simon's, and Herb would come to the beach with us.
Yeah. I remember the time at the cloisters, but that's for another time. Then we didn't see each other for 7 years. I never thought I would ever see her again. So from me being from 21 to 28, I did not see her, never thought I would ever see her again. I was in love with her. In fact, when my little sister, Mary Foy, would get me dates at the University of Alabama with girls, sorority girls, they would come back and say, is Herb in love with somebody else? Well, I can't get his attention, And I was. Really, I went all the way through the JAG, went through Osan, Korea, and decided in Korea that I'm 28 and I'm never getting married. I'm gonna date a lot, but I'm not gonna ever get married because I'm in love with Lulie, but I'll never see her again. Never thought I would. That was kind of where we are.
Well, I guess I was finishing up my junior and senior year at Emory. And I had a boyfriend, and probably wasn't a very healthy relationship, for sure wasn't. And so I had graduated from Emory, and I was doing postgraduate work. Is that when we reconnected? I was doing postgraduate work. And so quite honestly, I really hadn't thought about Herb a whole lot, because I did have a boyfriend, but it was during that year while I was in graduate school that we reconnected.
You were 27, right?
Is that, oh my goodness, then it wasn't in graduate school where we reconnected.
You were at what's the hospital?
I was working at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta.
7 years back.
Yeah, so it wasn't in graduate school. golly. And so it was when that was happening that we reconnected, because Herb had come back from Korea, and he was finishing his last year in the JAG at Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Eglin Air Force Base. And my brother had sent him a Christmas card and said, Lulie's in Atlanta and available if you're interested.
But that thing had been sitting on the desk in Birmingham for 2 months, from like November all the way till January when I came back from Korea. They had decided that once you're overseas, that they feel so sorry for you, they'll let you pick where you want to go and be stationed there. And I knew I wanted to serve my country at the beach. So I picked Destin, Florida, which was the best place you could ever serve. And so that's why I was going there. But then when I got home to Birmingham, I saw this card that said Lulie is in Atlanta and available. Could have been knocked off into the trash can, never seen it. And so I was thinking, golly, I'm not sure what to do at this point. I mean, I haven't seen her in so long. And so I got down to Fort Walton Beach. It was February, it was cold. They had these phones that were outside, like a pay phone. It was freezing. It was like on a Monday night or something. And I called her, and I was thinking, as I was dialing, I was thinking, she won't know me. She's gonna say, who? And so I called and talked her into meeting me halfway between Atlanta and Fort Walton Beach, which is Montgomery, Alabama, where my little sister, Mary Foy and Gritz, lived. And so that's where we met, you know, after all those years. But it was so weird because every time throughout those 7 years, every time I was in the airport or any situation where there was a blonde, I would say, that's Lulie, and they would turn around and it wasn't Lulie. I mean, how many times did that happen? But I was hoping that it would be, you know, that we would just run into each other, but it didn't. So there I am at Mary Foy and Gritz's house, and I'm in the kitchen, and the doorbell rings. She comes to the doorbell and walks in. And it was so surreal. It was like taking binoculars and turning them backwards and looking in the binoculars longer. And it was just like, it was just not even in the same picture, but there she was. And it was like, we had never missed a beat. Lulie is, I mean, I've never had more fun with Lulie. We would do the craziest things. She's just like Jackson. She's just a wild child, okay? She gets me to do all kind of crazy things that I would never do, like Dastuka, you know, the water slide, whatever. And so we reconnect. Mary Foy and Gritz had a party that night. We reconnected. I mean, we ended up busting her table because I was trying to do acrobats with Lulie. It was unbelievable. And so it was so exciting to be back together, you know, and but it was, you know, because we had been like best friends before, and then now we were back. Now, do you want me to, can I tell what really connected us? Because that's your story.
Well, do you think that part of it needs to be included?
That was the key thing, I think, that was really what brought us together. And I've always been part of the story.
Okay, well.
Okay, well, this is the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is that I had always thought Lulie was so much better than me. She was always an A+. I was a B, I wasn't a C. I wasn't an A, I'm a B. I'm good at just about everything and get along pretty well with everybody and do everything pretty well. But I'm not an A. Lulie is an A. And I thought, Lulie, you deserve to marry somebody like Kennedy or a senator or something. And she said, no, I'm a horrible person. I'm terrible. I hate myself. And I'm, you know, and I'm going, no, you're an A. You're the best. And she said, no. And the more that I would tell her how great she was, I said, and I don't know why it is, because I'm a terrible reader and she's a great reader. I said, you're a great reader. And I can't read at all, you know, and even though I went through law school. you know? And I said, and so she would just get infuriated because she thought she was such a horrible person. And then to get rid of me, she said, I had an abortion. Now that's to get rid of me. But my reaction was, you think that's gonna stop me? Are you kidding me? Nothing's gonna stop me. Of course, she was on her way to Niger, Africa, in the Peace Corps.
Not at that point.
Not at that point, but ultimately. And I said, if I have to go to Africa and beat up every African, you are not getting away from me ever again. Not pretty crazy thoughts, but that's the way it was, you know. And so she had gone through really 7 years of really, I don't know if you call it self-hate or whatever, but it was really a dark period. And, you know, and so I finally talked her into moving to Fort Walton Beach, you know, because I said, we keep going back and forth to Atlanta and the beach, and nothing's going to ever happen, because I had really reached the point where I really wanted to get married. I don't know, it kind of clicked like that. At 27, I didn't, but then at 28, I just clicked. I'm ready to be married. And so I tried to talk her into coming down there. And so she decided, okay, well, I'll get a job down there as a medical technologist at Fort Walton Beach Hospital. And she got it. But on that same day, what happened?
I had been planning I'd already applied for the Peace Corps. So my letter to the acceptance to the Peace Corps arrived on the same day in the mail as my acceptance for a position at Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And so I was going to have to make a decision. Was I going to join the Peace Corps? And they wanted me to go to New York for training, and then on to Niger, Africa. And then, or was I going to go to Fort Walton Beach? So I got in touch with the Peace Corps and said, will you give me 6 months? And I will get back to you about whether I want to accept this position or not. And so that's what we did. I packed up and I moved to Fort Walton Beach, Florida, and then I moved in October.
Yeah, but you know, the decision was, I felt like you made the right decision for 2 reasons. Because I had 2 things going for me that were really, really important at that point. One, that I think switched the balance. One was the fact that I was at the beach and you love the beach. So that was really in my favor. But the other one was your 100-year-old grandmother who was on my side, you know? And so between that, I think we won over the Peace Corps.
Yeah. So I moved to Fort Walton and we got married. I moved in October, and then January of the following year.
It was going to be a year, but then old Herb, which is my dad, he would say, Herb, are y'all in love? And I said, yeah. He says, well, if you're in love, you either grow together or you grow apart. So I wouldn't wait too long to get married. This was in September. And so we switched it from the following way back to January, and I got married in Sweetwater.
Yeah, we got married in Sweetwater, and it was fabulous. We got married in my home, which was, a 200-year-old home, an antebellum type home, and my mother just knocked herself out planning the wedding, and then following the wedding, we went back to Fort Walton Beach, but then 2 weeks later.
No, it was just a week later.
A week later, we went on our honeymoon with the Birmingham Ski Club.
There were 90 of them to Crested Butte.
Yeah.
We love skiing.
So anyway, that was fun.
We skied every year during our 45 years of marriage, except the 8 years when we had children.
Well, when they were little.
When they were little, right.
And so, yeah. And then we finished out that time, but we left. You finished the JAG, and that summer we moved to Dallas.
To Dallas, right. And have been there ever since. When I was 58, and that was 2006, was when our family expanded. That was when Jackson married Haley. Okay, that was big because now all of a sudden we've created another whole family out of our family. Our whole life has been about relationships, family relationships, priority relationships. The top one of that is Jesus Christ. So that's set up.
Well
Now,
done.
do you want to talk about them? Because I know that the daughter-in-laws were very important to you.
Well, and I like to call them daughters in love rather than in law. And the thing I most appreciate about it is if we could have had our prayers answered, we couldn't have lovelier daughters in love than Cheyenne and Haley and Jenna. And I do love the fact that their relationship is really wonderful. We've been so blessed because everybody's in Dallas. So we get to do life together, but even though we live just not even that far apart, it's hard to get together. And Jackson's been instrumental now in us making sure we appropriate time on our calendar. We make that margin to get together, particularly since the grandkids. We now have the grandkids. The cousin relationship is so valuable to me because it was so important when I was growing up. And so getting them together and being able to watch those relationships form with the cousins at an early age and hopefully be cultivated into just a really special relationship as they get older. As far as the grandkids go, of course, Ella being the first, it was the light of our life, and we enjoyed it so much.
She's 9 right now.
Yeah, and it was fun because at her first recital, when she was 2, her ballet recital, she ended up, the whole family was there.
And gave her flowers.
Yeah, we all celebrated. And I think, as we've had more grandkids, we haven't been able to be at every event, but the family makes an effort to be there to celebrate every event. And when we were young with the boys, I had started a practice on birthdays that it was an affirmation day. This was the day that we told the birthday person attributes we most appreciated about them. And I not only wanted them to be able to be built up, I wanted them to learn how to receive a compliment. And we've continued that. We even now with the adults still schedule that time to have affirmation day to celebrate each person's birthday. And then just as far as with Haley and Jenna and Shy, I have a lot of friends, and I know that it can be a real struggle with the mother-in-law. I know I have a book, it's called Mildew, and it's mother-in-laws do everything wrong. There's humor in it, but there's a lot of truth in it as well. So I've really appreciated the fact that all 3 sons, as they have married, I think this is so important, but they put their wives ahead of me. And you just have to do that. You have to protect your wife a lot of times from your mom. And, but they've done it with grace, and we bumped heads occasionally, but I think I appreciate so much that all 3 wouldn't hesitate to call me out because they value the relationships we all share, and we can't do this well unless we're honest with each other and share the proper boundaries. Boundaries are important, and as the family grows, we have to honor those boundaries with the daughters-in-law and with the grandkids, and I have 3 sons that are willing to set those boundaries with me. Because of that, I think our relationships have flourished over the years. Not that we haven't bumped into problems and had to work through them, but Herb has been amazing in helping our family work through conflict. And we don't put it on the back shelf. We put it up front, and we process it well. And with each personality of each son, it's just normal that we're all going to bump up against each other, but we are quick to address it. And I think that that's why our family still enjoys being together so much.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I really appreciate about Lulie is during this time, she so much wants to help these daughter-in-laws out by babysitting. And she gives them a break when it's so hard to find anybody with a brand new baby that can actually go over that you trust, to give them a break. And so particularly in the early years, she'll do it twice a week. And the whole purpose, you know, is that she handles the baby and I support Lulie. You know, I don't do babies, but I can do little kids. But the whole deal is, the whole purpose of that is to build a relationship with the grandchild, but probably the bigger reason is to give the husband and the wives time to have a date night and to go and be with each other, because children take all your time and all your energy and all your resources and everything, and it's really hard to grow together to be one. And so we try to fill that gap. They don't see many other parents doing that. You know, we love doing it. You know, we go to Gloria's and they just know us there because we bring so many grandkids there, and we mess the table up so badly, you know, but have such a great time, and they're all so nice to us. But that really bonds us with these grandchildren, and you know, they've been doing it for so long now, it's just a natural thing. But you know, it's such a blessing for us to be in the same town with them and want to be with them. And so, but Lulie's the one who spearheads that, and she's the one who makes it happen, so that when the daughter-in-law needs to go to the doctor or needs to go do something like that, she'll immediately volunteer to be there. So she has really set the pace on that, and I want to be wherever she is. So, you know, if she wants to go babysit, hey, let's go. You know, I'm all for it. But it's really allowed us to really, you know, during this 58 to 74 years, you know, it really started, I guess, when Ella, you know, in '64 when Ella was born. So these, you know, but we got 7, and it's been great. And so, yeah, I think that's good.
There's one story that I love about Mom when I think about her and just her courage, honestly, is that when I was 5, I was a part of a very large and prestigious big wheel gang, essentially, of like 12 5-year-olds, and we pretty much ruled the streets. But we weren't always great about putting up our big wheels at the end of the day when we went inside. And so it was actually Halloween, and people were walking around asking for candy. There's a lot going on. And I had left my big wheel at the end of the yard. And somehow Mom looks over and there's these cars coming by, and someone had taken my big wheel and put it into the back of this truck and was driving off. And typically you would think someone just starts yelling at them or tries to get the cops or something like that. No, she literally runs and jumps into the back of the truck and starts pulling out all these big wheels and throwing them out of the yard and just chastising these people. And I was just complete shock. But I think it just shows how serious she is about defending the people she loves, that she's not sitting back hoping something will happen. I mean, she just literally leapt into the back of this truck of someone she had no clue who it was. And I just love that story and kind of what it shows about her.
Like, basically, we're coming back from baseball practice. Dad has this van that is just, I mean, I don't know if anybody would be allowed to drive it these days. Like, it obviously never passed emissions tests. They literally had a guy named Manuel who they would have him drive it around the block like a couple times just so like the emissions would hit the standard that could pass inspection. And so we're coming back, and me and Dad are driving, and we hit this point where all of a sudden the transmission gives out, and the only thing it will drive in is first gear, which means this van's going about 8 to 15 miles an hour at a time. And if you know Dad's car, I mean, like, the van had duct taped a rock had been thrown at it, and instead of him fixing the window, he just duct taped it. It always had this vent when you sat on the passenger shotgun side. It had this vent that would just like slowly leak liquid. You never knew what liquid it was, but it was just always leaking on your feet, and you're like, you're just like keeping your feet up, and you're like, Dad. He's like, just don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. It's fine. It's not, like what? It's like it's air. It's AC fluid. It's not a big deal. You're fine. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden you're like chugging along, and all of a sudden it just like goes like, and it's going like we're literally trying to get through an intersection at right by Northwest Bible Church, like that Northwest Highway and Preston or something, and we're literally, me and him, like the light is turning yellow, and we're not making it through the intersection before red. Like it is, we're like literally hoping that we'll get through because it's going like 6 miles an hour through the intersection, and we're sitting there and like Dad is just like, I don't know what to do, but we're gonna make it. And I mean, it took us about maybe 45 minutes to an hour to go about 4.5 miles, like, because we're going so slow. But Dad loves this van. I mean, like, it's like literally like was part of the family for a while. It didn't have a working speedometer. I remember at one point it like gave out on the middle of a trip. It was just, I mean, it was great. Man, that van was crazy. But
I mean, I think that one of the things that really says about Dad to me that I love is you know, Dad grew up in Mountain Brook in Birmingham, which is like the most prestigious area. He's son of a doctor, went to law school, went to a boarding school. Like he's lived in these very wealthy areas his entire life. And he would drive this van. And I think the best part about it was this van was horrible. But he put Highland Park baseball, like all these Highland Park.
It was like his ability to stick it to the man was.
And I think that he found this joy in the fact that he would be in Highland Park and would be driving this van. And I remember asking Dad a long time ago, and he said that there was a verse he had read a long time ago that said, you can't serve God and mammon, which means money. And he decided one day that that was not what he is about. And I think this van symbolized that for him. And so he would crank the van, and literally billows of smoke would come out
Uncle
the back.
Buck style.
It was, but I think for him, he referred to it as a family member that none of us wanted. None of us loved the van. We hated the van. And I remember one day, the van had really stopped working, and so Dad had parked it in the back, and it started putting old files into it. But the best part was it was on Hillcrest, and so everyone came by,
like as you're entering
drove by and saw it all the time. And so one day, Mom called the Salvation Army, and I think they came and got the van, and I don't think she told Dad that she was.
He was not happy.
And he came home, and it was a very, very sad moment. All of us were very excited about it, and I think that was the final demise of the van.
That was going on like 25 years of the van. It was like,
I know.
it stopped having a speedometer at 300,000 miles, and that was like 10 years left of life in that van. Yeah.
I think a good story on Mom is, as I just think about like the legacy of her life, is wrapped up so much in just how much she cares for people. And one of the main ways I see that kind of demonstrated is through the work she's done with Someone Cares, the nonprofit she started, and just all the women she's impacted. Like, it's just crazy because like I was like having like coffee with someone recently, like at Watermark, and it's like this person I think is 10 years younger than me, but like knows who my mom is, like, and just the ability like that she has had such a positive impact on so many women and so many families because of the work she's done with just helping people process some of the trauma associated with the abortion that they had. And so just being able to realize just how she approaches such a sensitive topic with like no judgment, just care, and like helping people in their worst moment, maybe in a very painful moment. And like, I'm so proud of her. Like, it's a really cool dynamic. I have friends that are like have difficult relationships with their parents, and like we'll talk about like, oh, like, and I'm like, I don't have a memory ever being embarrassed or not proud of my mom. Like, it's like, she is such an amazing person. Like, I'm proud to call her my mom, and like, in how that's even benefited my life in so many ways, where like maybe somebody, like, I got a business opportunity, or like a social like situation where there's a mutual connection, and it's the respect people have for my mom has like opened up doors or created relationships for me simply because of just the respect I have for my mom. And so it's a really cool legacy that she's created with this, and very few people like even know about it. It's kind of a thing that is not super broadcasted because it's such a sensitive topic for the people going through that experience. So,
Well, what about that too, where wasn't it like the Dallas Seminary? And someone's like, who's the best speaker you've ever had, like ever listened to at Dallas Seminary? And they're like, Lulie Thompson. You're like,
okay, yeah.
She's not a speaker.
So I'm on a plane, I don't know, this is maybe 10 years ago, and like just sitting next to this person, never met them before, we're just talking. She says she goes to Dallas Theological Seminary. We're talking, and like, I don't know, like somehow like throughout the conversation I said like, hey, you know, who's somebody like your favorite, like, you know, teachers or speakers you've heard, you know, during your time at Dallas Theological Seminary? And she's like, oh, Lulie Thomas. And I'm like, what? I was like, I didn't even know my mom like taught there or like spoke there.
Did she know that you were her son?
No, this person sitting next to me on the plane had no idea who, and just said that to me.
I've never heard the story.
And so, and then I like went and I was like, and she's like, oh yeah, like I usually once a year will go and be a guest speaker at DTS.
Yeah, we had no idea. She never tells us.
She doesn't tell us. Like, she like has spoken downtown multiple times, and she like invited me finally, finally one time I found out about it, went down, and like there's this huge rally she's speaking at, and like I had no idea. She like just plays it so under the radar. Like, she was on like the TV show 700 Club one time, you know, like, but just that she commands a huge amount of respect because like the way she carries herself and like backs it up with like real action and really helping people in a difficult situation. Yeah, that was a good memory. Yeah. Prompting me that.
Yeah.
One thing I loved about Dad was his ability to create games and fun. He was actually a great storyteller. But one thing that he would do for me and my friends when we were little, and this is maybe between 5 and 9 or something, is he would take us down to Turtle Creek and we would go on these adventures down to the creek. So we would literally get down to this creek bed and we would have to make it from one area of the creek to another area within 20 minutes. And if we did that, we could go to 7-Eleven and pick anything we wanted at 7-Eleven. So, and it was so, I remember it being really fun and serious, and we'd have to like go through a tunnel, and you know, and there was like these mossy things, so inevitably someone would like fall and hurt themselves. But I loved that he would do that, because I just thinking, being an adult, that sounds horrible actually. So but I remember it being so fun, and my friends would come, and he was always just so engaged. He was your coach. He was never passive. He was never passively watching someone else. He was always going to be engaged. He was going to be the school, like Sunday school teacher. He was going to be your coach. If he wasn't actually coaching, he was somehow behind the scenes, super involved. So he would, I remember with baseball, he would literally buy this, I decided to start pitching. So he bought this whole videotape series and learned how to like literally coach me in pitching, even if he wasn't the coach of the team. So that's something I really took away, was not being passive, but actually being active and involved. And I saw that my passions became his passion.
Jackson and I started dating in 2003 or 2004, a long time ago. And I remember I met Herb and Lulie it was like a hotel in Waco. And I remember just being so nervous to meet them because I really liked Jackson, and I was hoping that they liked me. And they were just, of course, so sweet from the beginning, which everybody would say that about Herb and Lulie. They're just very kind. One thing that I loved about first getting to know Lulie is she would take me to get manis and pedis, and we would get like the, what is it called when you, the French? The French. And I have a great mother, but that's not anything we ever did. So I think my first mani-pedi was with Lulie, actually. And so, because I never went like in college or younger. And so it was just really special to have that time to kind of get to know her. And I'll never forget the first time we actually went. She also brought my friend with me, and my friend Paige from college. And Paige sat in between me and Lulie at the manicure place. And Paige, we left, and she was like, "How did that happen?" And so it was just kind of funny that was like our first mani-pedi. But then we had many others after that, and it was really fun. We should actually start doing that with my girls now, because I think that would be a sweet kind of tradition to do. But that's kind of a first intro story that comes to mind. So I don't know if any of y'all want to interject now.
Yeah. My first meeting of Herb and Lulie was for Newton's birthday, which means we did an encouragement circle.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
Very first time I met them. And I think y'all were on the phone.
Yes.
And Holden was there in person, and it was Newton's birthday, and so we went over to their house, and Lulie had made ham spaghetti, which is the famous, like, Newton's very favorite thing in the whole world. And she'd made ham spaghetti, and we're eating, and then she said, "Okay, we're gonna do the encouragements." And we went around, they had like a little baby pool outside for Bear and Sabra, and we stood around it, and we did encouragements, and I was like equally as intimidated, and like then I also wanted to cry for how sweet it was and how special it was to be a part of the Thomas family and doing the encouragements for Newton's birthday. And so I feel like that was a great introduction to the family, because it is such a special tradition for birthdays to encourage each other.
Yes, totally.
Mine is totally different, because I feel like I'm the newbie to the family. Even though I've been in the family for 5-6 years now, I just feel like, we've only been married 5.5, 10.5, and 15, right? So I'm definitely the baby, even though I'm the oldest. But I had such a different experience, because obviously Holden and I got married a little later in life, and he had already kind of had a previous relationship that he was kind of moving on from. So I think I got introduced late, because I think Holden was trying to hide me from the family, because he was so afraid that the family was going to like me too much that then they would pressure him to marry me. So I think he was scared. But I remember meeting you all first, and it was through a work event when all the brothers worked together, and he invited us out for like a happy hour or a dinner or something. And I remember y'all first. So I think I had like a really good idea of who Herb and Lulie were going to be just after talking with you all. So my nerves were not as high, but I think the expectations felt like they were high on me for some reason. But what I loved about them is that they were so humble, and like they were so unassuming when I met them. Herb, having found out that I had gone to University of Arkansas, like he and I connected very fast, just because we both love SEC. And he immediately just kind of let his defenses down after that. And then Lulie, I did not know, was such an influential person in the community that we all live in, and just seemed like the sweetest little mom, like, happy to be here, what can I get you? Like, very Southern, sweet, whatever, everything that I had been used to in like going to the University of Arkansas. But then I was in a Bible study at the time, and when I mentioned that I had gone on a date with Holden Thomas, they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Is that weird? What's happening? What's happening?" And they were like, "Do you know his mom is started Someone Cares at Watermark?" Which at the time I had no clue what the organization was. But then come to find out, a lot of my friends had actually been really touched by her. And so I remember then meeting her the second time and feeling like I was in the presence of a local celebrity and immediately got intimidated. But she is just incredibly humble, and I just remember them putting me immediately at ease and welcoming me to the family, and it was just it was something I felt like I had always like hoped and dreamed and like prayed for in terms of entering into a family. So it was a really unique and special experience.
She's so humble about all that she does, and I didn't even know that much about her ministry or what she did, and then over time have just met so many women who've been impacted by Lulie, and she just comes out and tells us, oh, I'm doing this thing with this person. It's just we hear it from other people, which I think is such a great trait of humility. But that woman she never stops. She's always helping someone, whether it's us or a person in need or her neighbor or a friend or Herb or one of the boys, of course. She's always doing something to help someone else. So definitely a trait I love about Lulie.
Yes.
When I was first in the family, and it was, let's see, okay, so this was probably in 2011. So I'd been in the family about 5 years, so a newbie. And I think I was still the only daughter in love, as Lulie says, which is so sweet. Yes. And she is a mother in love. She's just so kind and easy. But I got a call when I was at work when we first moved to Dallas, and she left a 30-second voicemail, and I checked it while I was at work. And Haley, I just wanted to let you know that Jackson just dropped off y'all's laundry, and I was going through it, and I found a pair of panties that they didn't really look so good, so I just threw them away. I hope that's okay with you. Okay, bye. And I was like, number one, I was like, why is my laundry over at Lulie's house? Because I told Jackson to do the laundry, so I had no idea that Lulie was doing my laundry. And so anyways, it was just so funny because she was like so sweet to do it and to call and tell me that she threw away a pair of my underwear. Oh my gosh. So anyways. I feel like most of my friends with their mother-in-laws have like horror stories. And to me, that's like a funny story that I'll have for the rest of my life. Lulie and Herb, both of them, they are like so good at boundaries, yes. Which I think that would be so hard as a mother-in-law because it's especially when you're living in the same town. Mm-hmm. They've never overstepped their boundaries. They've always been so careful about that, really from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so, which is very rare because I feel most of my friends talk about like one of the biggest issues they have is in-laws, which we're so blessed that that's really not an issue. So.
And it is such a unique situation that all three brothers live in the same city as their parents, and all of us have families that are out of town. And so there's never been any pressure to spend a holiday, a birthday, any special occasion with the Thomas family. They're so accommodating as far as, well, whenever we get together, we'll celebrate. And so it's such a gift to our nuclear families, but also like our extended family, our families, that Herb and Lulie are so understanding. I mean, it just is such a gift that I hope to emulate in the future. It's like all these things that Lulie does, I tuck away for how to be the best mother in love to three boys.
No, it's true. Because it is hard, because that's something that I've like feared with only having boys. Like, you know, there's that saying that's a son is a son until he takes a wife, a daughter's a daughter for the rest of her life. And now I'm like, oh. And the second I had boys, I was like, well, crap, now I'm never going to see my kids again. And you just immediately start like going there in your head. But she has demonstrated how you can really create intimacy with the wives and the families. And what I love about that, to tag on what Jenna said, is that they're so open to inviting our families alongside with us. Or if we have a holiday that we're celebrating at one of our homes, like they're totally fine just to come over and be with our immediate families, which I think is a huge testament to just how flexible they are. I remember it was my mom's 60th birthday, and they had never been to Tulsa, and we live out on like 12 acres. And my stepdad loves to throw parties and do all the fireworks and do all the things. And we invited Herb and Lulie, and I think everyone was like, okay, you know, like please invite them. Like, we want them to come. And I think my thought was that they're not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to drive 5 hours and like whatever. And I just remember them being so joyful and so like, we're honored that we're invited. We'll totally come. And I was like, really? Came, slept in the guest bedroom, like did coffee talk, did wine talk, did all the talks with all of my extended family. And they just adored them. Mm-hmm. And so it's really neat that someone can come and spend that much time with their daughter and loves other family and not have any sense of jealousy or comparison or anything like that. So they're just really unique in that way. So like you, I really try to tuck these things away and be like, okay, don't be crazy when you're older. Be like, so I mean, it's really impressive.
And it's the same thing with the grandkids. Like, there's so much respect when any of our families come to visit. Oh, well, we can watch the kids if you want some adult time, or we can come and hang out, or we can stay away. I mean, it's just whatever we like. They kind of defer to us on everything, which is so sweet.
And then thank us for letting them see the kids, which I'm like,
yes.
What? Like, thank you for coming over and letting us get away from our children if we need a night.
Yes.
Or, you know, they're just so genuine, and I think that's what the kids pick up on. Uh-huh. And it's really sweet to see those relationships because they just love
Patty and Woo.
Woo and Patty.
Patty and Woo are amazing grandparents. They're always there. I was lucky to have the first grandchild on both sides of my family, and they spoiled us so much, and they still spoil all of us now that there's 7 grandchildren. And so they're always there to babysit. They'll drop anything to spend time with the kids, and they will create adventures with them, which is so fun. One of my favorite things that they do is something that the boys did with I guess they did it with Herb. Uh-huh. Lulie's the one really that takes them to the tunnels.
Yes, but I think Herb did it with the boys when they were younger, and then Lulie has.
So Lulie has taken the tradition where there's these tunnels at the Highland Park, right next to the Highland Park pool, and there's this extremely long tunnel. Like, if you get in it, you as an adult have to almost bend over completely flat and walk. It is painful. And I did it once. Me and Newton did it once when we were at that park, and like, I got through that tunnel and I didn't think I was gonna make it. It was painful on my back, and Lulie's going up and down it like all the time and taking the kids and, you know, creating these special adventures with them, and it's just really special. So.
And they engage on the kids' level. Like, I feel like that is the most amazing thing, because my parents are great grandparents, but Herb and Lulie have this special bond with all of the grandkids because they enter into their world. Like, they will do videos with Ella and the fairy gardens, and Herb will put on the Avenger costumes and have sword fights with Luke, and like, they'll get in and they'll dig with Hendrix. I mean, it's just like this incredible, let me enter into your world instead of forcing you to enter into my world. And so it's I'm always inspired when I watch them play with the kids. I'm like, yes, this is what I need to be doing, not cleaning the house.
I know.
He does it just as much as Lulie, and he is so good with all of the children. Mm-hmm. He's great with my girls, and he gets down and plays with them, and also Herb is such an adventurer and a researcher, and we've really bonded over that. I mean, I feel like we are kindred spirits in that way, and that's been really special to have. We just went to Hawaii with them, and Herb and Lulie went on a hike with me, Ella, and Gia, and they created this like magical story. And like, you know, we were on this hike and it turned into some like magical fairy story. And it was incredible. It was one of my best memories from that vacation. So.
Herb in another sense, other than just being a grandfather, which he is amazing at, has always been really good at like giving snippets of wisdom, whether it's via text or like he'll just kind of casually drop it when you're having conversations with him. But I remember we were having a conversation recently just because schools and education has been on my mind now that my kids are starting to enter that. And he was like, well, you know how to control their friends, right? And I was like, no. And he's like, you just coach all the teams and then you tell them who they're allowed to hang out with. Because it's a good way to get to know the kids and the families and who they can or cannot, like who's going to be the positive influence and who's going to be the negative influence. And it's funny because I see that now, even in Holden's friendships from grade school. Like we run into them now that all of our kids are all in preschool together, and we still see these like same friendships, and they all adore Holden, and Holden adores these people, and I mean just everything they've been doing for Luke Coffee. I mean, I'm just thinking about Luke was recently kind of in a pickle, and no one was really to kind of come alongside him and help him on his journey, and Herb was the first one to step up and say, no matter the cost, like I will be there for you. And I just think he sets that example time and time again of like faithfulness and loyalty and just generosity, truthfully. I think he's very good at, again, showing humility and being very unassuming in the gifts that he and the talents that he has to offer. But if anything is wrong with any of the boys, any of us, any of the kids, any of our immediate circles, I mean, I feel like he would be the first one there to kind of like navigate and advocate.
Yes.
So, I don't know, he's a very impressive patriarch.
Yes.
And I think that's because he comes from a very long lineage of impressive patriarchs. I think he was the first to kind of challenge his faith and become a Christian, and has just really kind of made that his mission in terms of pouring into marriages, which has really been foundational for Holden and I know y'all as well. But his passion, his entrepreneurial mind to like create this app and to really just advocate for marriage is like so unique and special, just because they meet with so many young couples and work through counseling with them. And I don't know, they're a really special duo that I think we get really used to, and it's easy for us to kind of not take them for advantage, but never take advantage of them. But we're just spoiled.
We are so
and we're
spoiled.
used to it. And like Haley said, a majority of the stories I hear are families that kind of bicker or don't necessarily jive or want to spend as much time together. And I feel like we enjoy spending time together, and there's never really an issue. So anyways, I think a lot of that is attributed to Herb's just perseverance of pushing forward on all things.
That's what I wanted to make sure we captured for me, is just the way Herb and Lulie truly invest in and care for our marriages. And I tell them this all the time, but my parents are divorced, and so theirs is the longest example of a healthy marriage that I have been privy to, and just the way that they have raised their boys and the way that they care about our marriages and making sure we're having date nights and keeping the kids so that we can connect. And I hate to tell Herb that it's probably never going to happen that we're going to have 14 hours of FaceTime face to face for 14 hours. But just these like setting the bar really high for the boys, and getting together and encouraging them at family breakfasts. And Newton and I talk a lot, and I feel like I'm always on the offensive in our marriage, and he's like, I just assume everything's going to be okay because I've watched my parents go through the best and the worst times, and they have made it through. And so just having a spouse with that mentality and I don't know, desire to work things out and stick around, and has just been the biggest gift and blessing in my life that will impact generations to come. So.
My name is Ella, and I am 9. And my favorite thing about Will and Patty are they are fun, and I love hanging out with them.
My name is Logan.
I am 7 years old, and my favorite thing about them is that they let us do things that sometimes our parents don't let us do. Sometimes they let us watch YouTube stuff, which my mom doesn't really let us do. He goes by Patrick LaFupache, and he didn't like that people his name was shortened to Pooh, so he changed it to Patty. And then Woo, I do not know why she goes by that. We went in the creek one day when I was like 7 or 8, and we would fill up the jars with water, and then we would spill them down like this slide of dirt. My favorite time with them was when we went to the creek and did the tunnels. Yeah, well, we make them with this app called iMovie.
Really, it all started when I was 15 years old, okay? And for 2 years, when I was 15 and 16, I went in each night to the bed of Louise and Herbert Thomas, my parents, and they were married 65 years, but on a scale of 1 to 100 of being both married and a parent, they're at least a 99, if not higher. I mean, they're the greatest ever. And I learned everything from them during that 2-year period. And so I said after that, and it was absolutely true, at age 16, I knew more about being married and raising children than people who had 4 and 5 children, had been married 10 years, because so few ever are trained in how to do it correctly. And I was trained in that. So I figured I'm a pro. So I finally get back with Lulie. I talk her to marry me. And then I find out she's in great trauma. She is a wounded woman, you know. And I thought I could fix her. I thought, okay, now if it takes me 10 years, I can fix this woman, you know, because I've been taught by the best. I mean, I don't know how soon it was, but I can remember when we were going down in Greenville and you jumped out of the car and run down. I mean, we just had these major blow-ups, and at the beginning you told me you never really wanted to marry me. You just did it because you thought it was a good thing and that you didn't love me, and you really did everything you could to push me away. And but I thought, oh no, I'm a pro. I can overcome this, you know. If it takes me 10 years. Well, at 10 years, I'm going, oh my God, this may take 20 years. I mean, wow, you know. And because we had gone to at least 4 counselors. One of them scared me to death because it was a Gestalt approach where you sat in one chair and then you were the passive one, you would move over here, and you were the aggressive one. And I wanted to kill you over here because you over here were killing this one over here. And I was going, oh my gosh, what is this? And we went to all this, and it wasn't working. And it was really in that 14th year when the Lord just, you know, you said, you know, Holden came into the kitchen and said, well, Mom, why do you always cry during your birthday? You know? And at that point you realized, hey, and you told me this, you said, Herb, I don't care if you suffer, but I don't want to pass this on to the next generation. So, you know, so she turned to the Lord, and the very next day, driving down Central, I think it was, and the very first abortion recovery came on the radio, that 30 seconds thing. What are the odds of you listening to it, moving at a time? Well, I mean, you know, and I got to go through that 12-week course and watch it, and it taught me so much about the wound because I had learned that, and Lulie has let me talk to husbands to explain that later. She had a gushing wound, and for 18 years she had tried to hide it and put everything around it. She had built a wall up around it, but then every so often, then it festered, and every so often the toxicity would come out, and mainly on Saturday mornings when everything's out of control. And the three guys and I, we knew, hey, we better get back in that foxhole because somebody's going to die. But Lulie just blows up. And then she's really sorry about it, and she wished because she had tried to control it. Well, once she went through this thing, they tore down the wall of defense to protect her from this shame they had and this wound. And then it was raw all week long, and then Jesus healed it, Well, I'm watching all this stuff and I'm realizing, hey, I was taught by the best how to fix a marriage, and I couldn't do it, but Jesus could. And so whenever I met with husbands that couldn't figure out why their wives were so messed up, I said, hey, okay, this is how having abortion is, okay? There you are, you're sitting there. I get a samurai sword here. I cut your arm off at the shoulder, and you're shooting blood across the street. And then a couple of minutes later, I say, okay, don't let the last play affect the next play. There's no crying in this, don't let it bother you. Get it behind you, which so many husbands do. It's if you've had a bad situation, but you can't do it. They're bleeding to death. They're gonna bleed to death if you don't do something. And when you realize the kind of wound that they have, then you realize you can't do it. And so that was really critical all the way through, is to realize that we had to be able to depend on the Lord to get us through this thing. Our marriage could not work just because I knew from Herbert and Louise Thomas how to be a great husband, and then hope that Lulie would be a great wife, and then we would have children and everything, that taught me a lot. And so as time went on, I saw this happening in so many marriages. 3 out of 4 marriages fail. It's an emotional divorce. It's not, maybe 50% actually divorce, but the other have independent parallel lives where they do not, as God commands us, is to become one, because they have a lot of initial unresolved conflict the first year through arguments. Second, third, and fourth year, when you have two, 3 children, you spend so little time with each other that you slowly withdraw from each other until you decide in the 5th or 6th year, one of them decides, hey, I'm done. I'm out of here, okay? And this is how it happens in almost every marriage. And they'll decide at that once, and then they'll look around, and then eventually they'll take some action. And it may be pornography, it may be adultery, it is that they just decided they're going to be loyal and lonely, that they're just going to have an independent life, stay for the children, and they'll go 20 and 30 years before it actually parts. But there is no fire in that marriage anymore. And that's what's happened, and I just decided really to do something about it when it was Holden's, wedding, and they let the dad talk to the people, and I said, okay, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to probably make all y'all mad, but we're down in San Miguel, Mexico, and I'm going to tell them about the drift. I'm going to tell them. And so I told them, I said, what happens is that over a period of time, it's really typical by about the 10th year and the 3rd children, is that you're so far apart that you start seeing the other one, their strengths as weaknesses. And then even contempt can come in there. And so I'm going to, and so beware of the drift. And the drift starts day one when you don't learn how to resolve differences, and you don't work together as equal partnership. And so but then after that, for the last 5 years, I've had this great desire to go after the group that I think has the best chance of reversing it while they're in the danger zone. And the danger zone is the first through the 6th or 7th year, where they're starting to withdraw, and there's a chance to reverse it and cause oneness and cause bonding. And but the biggest reason that they can't do it or never were very good at it is like swimming, and you go and you jump in the deep end, but you don't know how to swim. And you drown, and you go, I can't figure out why I drowned. Well, you drowned because nobody ever taught you how to swim. And we all get into marriages, and we don't know how to do marriage well. And so we hurt each other's feelings all the time. We're very selfish, and because of that, we never become one. And the fire that's there, that passion that you have for each other, that oxytocin that you have for each other, eventually fades as you withdraw. And so my whole deal is to create a marriage priority training course and boot camp for all of the millennial married with young children under 8, okay? And there are about 12 million of those, but I'm going to go after the 2 million that are actually Christians in there, because I feel like, what it does is it promotes 3 priority relationships. 1 with Christ, 2 with your spouse, and 3 with your children. And you spend all your time nurturing that. And I think that's really what our life has been, Lulie and I, is that we have prioritized those 3, and we've really nurtured those to be able to do that. And so I had Herb and Lulie to guide us along that, but somebody needs to teach them how to do that. And so that course would do that. So I've been studying all this stuff, and really it showed to me that I originally started off with techniques of how you can resolve conflicts, but that's not enough. The key to it is your relationship with the Lord and getting closer to the Lord, because as you do that, the Lord will meet your needs even if your spouse doesn't. So many people who are dissatisfied and they're unhappy in their marriage, most of it is because they've been selfish and they don't realize it. And they've drifted away from the Lord. They are now drifting away from each other, and they're prioritizing their children generally. And so they've just decided, okay, well, my children like me, so I'm going to really get into them. But my husband, I don't care if I ever see him again. Please don't touch me. And what happens is that eventually some outsider comes in and breaks that family open. But if they can learn how, first of all, to keep that fire going from the very beginning, and that's where, and I put that on the husband, of romancing the wife after he's married her, and teaching them how to keep romancing the wife, because as the leader, then you can keep that fire going. And then the wife, though, has to really allow the husband to romance her, because most of them have trauma in their past. And that trauma in the past needs to be overcome, and she has to be willing to go like Lulie did and do that, so that you can actually become one. So this is long, but this is, I am going to actually try to develop this course. It'll be for 12 couples with one Christian coaching couple that'll be done over Zoom for an 8-week period of time. And it gets them started on reversing that withdrawal and rekindling intimacy. And intimacy, I define, as more than just physical. It's emotional, spiritual, and physical intimacy. That's what really intimacy is. And that creates the bond there. And so it may never happen. It's been going on 5 years now. But one day I'm going to get that going, so that I can teach these couples that jump in the deep end how to swim in their marriage so that they won't fail. So that's my passion. It's not really coming together right now, but eventually it might. But I do have the desire to teach these beautiful couples that come together, and I go to their weddings, and then in 5 or 6 years, there's an emotional divorce, and a lot of people don't see that, but they're doing their own thing, and they started off the wrong way, never learned the right way to do that. And one of these days, I'm going to get that going because I think they need the help. So that's my latest passion.
I guess Someone Cares began actually probably began 29 years ago when I first experienced just the amazing forgiveness and freedom and healing that when we bring our worst moments to the Lord, what He can do with them. I just so long, my whole identity was focused in my worst moments and my worst choices. And even though I call myself a Christian, that's not how I lived. I was constantly in an atonement cycle trying to make up for the things I'd done, and God never meant for us to live that way. So it was just in that wonderful moment of going through a Bible study and finally getting it, that, it was all covered. And I just needed to receive it and walk in it. And so then it just became such an amazing goal for me to share that with others. And over the years, just to see so many women that come into our groups broken and isolated, and as they would say, never being able to really forgive themselves. And we can't forgive ourselves, but they never could really receive and enjoy the fullness of what Christ had done, even though they, in many cases, were Christians. So I think that's why I continue to have such a passion for it. You would think, well, 32 years, you can move on to the next thing. But for me, that is the thing. If I can just help women experience this, and I think by bringing them into community of people that have had a similar experience and struggle with the same self-image problems, regret, pain, unresolved grief, just giving them a time to come together with other women in a place that's safe. I love what a friend of mine said that's on our team. She said, we create a place that's safe and brave. You face your worst moments in a place where you're fully known and fully loved, and you can safely begin that journey of healing. And so, yeah, it's just been a privilege. And then the dividends from it is we've had the privilege of, after women have gone through, to come back to us when they get engaged and ask us to be mentors for them as they prepare for marriage. Also others that come back to us when they're struggling in their marriages or with their children, and ask us to reconnect with them and help them continue that journey in a place where their story's already known, and they can be open and honest and know that they're loved despite their bumblings and stumblings around. And yeah, it's just a remarkable thing to watch them then have children and get to be part of their story as they continue on the journey. And I think that has probably helped feed Herb's passion for marriage in a certain sense, because he's then been integrated into these stories, and we see the challenges that people that want to do it right, how hard it is and how discouraged you can become. And so I'll just sort of segue into Herb's passion for
But
for
you know, I
marriage.
want to point out that watching it from a distance, because these Bible studies that you live were all women and secret and safe, but you were really a pioneer of vulnerability. You know, when we were at Northwest Bible, great teaching and all like that, but as far as being vulnerable to your struggles, to you know, things that you're ashamed of, you know, you were so open and vulnerable about showing that and allowing Jesus to really come in and heal you, that so many other women would come up to you in private and say, you know, for the very first time I was abused when I was young, but you gave me a moment of freedom there that I have never experienced before. And Lulie kind of was a pioneer there. Then once we went to Watermark, they really had a climate, or they had a culture of being more vulnerable, but still Lulie was the most and the most often and most visible, and really set the tone for so many women to be willing to take that chance, to open up those past wounds and really be able to allow the Lord to deal with them. So I really thought that, you know, but I've been amazed that your passion has never dwindled. You know, it's as strong now as it's ever been, you know. And so that's really been amazing, and that's what I really appreciate, you know, about what you're doing, and it's an inspiration to the rest of us.
Someone Cares is an after-abortion care ministry, and it is a Bible study, because we realize that is the place where you can only experience the fullness of the healing that you need is at the foot of the cross. And so we take women through a 12-week study that we focus on the character of God, because so often we don't bring our wounds and our hurts and our failures to the Lord because we misunderstand what He's really like. We define Him by our experiences with our mothers and fathers growing up. Are we defining by so many lies that we've believed? So we focus first on His character and understanding that He is a God that is constantly calling you to come into His arms. That's His story. He didn't ask us to get to Him as much as He came to us first. It's just whether we're willing to come into those arms of grace or not. And then we focus on how God sees us, the delight that He takes in each one of us. And we are His workmanship, and He has great plans for us. It's just we're stuck in the muck of our past, and we can't move forward in the fullness of the future He wants for us. And then we take them into learning how to release all of this to Him. We process through anger and forgiveness. We process through grief. So many women that have had abortions don't feel like they even have the right to grieve the loss of their child because it was their choice. And so we process through that, and then we go into the process of receiving. Just opening your heart up to fully not just know in your head, but fully embrace with your heart that you are forgiven and set free through the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. And the study, like I said, is a 12-week study. We meet once a week. We meet in homes to make it intimate and safe. And then we have now started doing weekend retreats as well, which are fabulous. We'll start on a Friday night and finish on a Sunday afternoon. And it's just bringing women who have experienced the hurt of abortion together with other women that have experienced the hurt of abortion, but then the forgiveness and freedom in Christ. We bring them all together to minister to each other and let God do His healing work in their lives.
I think one of the most powerful things that I'd heard of was really the memorial service.
Mm-hmm.
You know, tell them about that, because it's so powerful.
Well, the last thing we do with the women is we give them the opportunity to honor and dedicate their children to the Lord. And we let them write a letter. We encourage them even to give the child a name. It's all these things that is inside of a woman's heart, because God designed a woman to give life and nurture life. And then when we made that choice, rather than giving life, we became a life taker. And so how do we get back into being a life giver again? And so just having that opportunity to express these things, give their children honor by giving them a name, speak the things they maybe never have said, and then to think about how they are going to continue honoring that child with their life moving forward, which is, for me, it was huge, because I just thought, you know, anything I can do from this point forward in honoring my child, rather than living in the negative side of it, to recognize every time I care for somebody else and I speak life into their world and into their hearts, that's a way to honor my child and honor the Lord, because that's what it's all about. And so you, rather than continuing in being stuck as a life taker, you become this life giver. I'm not just talking about biological life, but I'm talking about everything that you see through the redemption you have in Jesus Christ. Everything you hear through that redemption. Everything that you speak to someone else is to give life. And that life is in Jesus Christ. And so,
well, I remember bringing the white roses over to you, and I love that you give that to me.
Yeah, we, after the women finish reading their letters and honoring their children, we give them a white rose. And we just say, this represents the purity that you have in Jesus Christ. You are no longer see yourself through the shame, but you see it through the beauty and the new life. And that the old is gone now, and all has been made new. Yeah.
That's good.
Even though I'd accepted Christ when I was 13, I'd gotten caught up in the idea that as long as I did the right things and performed in the right way, then that love would be there. But if I didn't, then it would disappear. When I found out I was pregnant, I was the summer following my senior year in college. The very first thing I thought of was, God got me. I knew all along that my behavior was outside of His will, and I was terrified, absolutely terrified of anyone knowing. And so I didn't tell either of my parents, and I began on the journey of leaning on my own understanding and going my own way. And I was at Emory University, and a doctor at the hospital performed my abortion. I just remember following that abortion that not only did my child die, but a part of me died. And I got up and I walked out of that hospital, and I thought to myself, I will never ever think about this again. I began to just try to numb. I was living a double life. I was excelling in school, and then I was involved in drugs and a promiscuous lifestyle. I really didn't care whether I lived or died. Even though I saw my family, there was no more connection. I think they knew that something must have happened, but I just couldn't connect with people any longer. I continued to date the father of the child. The reason, I think, is that he felt guilty, and I felt guilty, and I felt like no one will ever have me anyway. But then after 7 years, I finally broke it off, and my husband of today got in touch with me, who I'd known when I was in high school and my first 2 years in college, and we began to date long distance. I ended up moving to Florida, where he was, and we got married. I thought, okay, now I can move on with my life. I can set this aside and begin again. But my husband wasn't the answer, even as wonderful as he's been all these years. So we married, and we moved from Florida to Dallas, Texas. I was so filled with self-hatred I would even at times, my husband couldn't believe it, but I would just say the most horrible things to myself. I'm worthless. No one would ever love me. God could never use me. God doesn't even like me. He may love me because he has to, but he does not like me. I remember being in the kitchen and this precious little boy comes in and said, "Mommy, why do you hate your birthday? And why do you always cry on your birthday? And why won't you let us give you presents?" And he did come in on my birthday and ask me about that. I don't think I showed any emotion with him whatsoever. I had no answer for him because at that point I couldn't even remember that I'd had my abortion on my birthday. I had so locked it away. It did hit me that I didn't care if I was not happy or my life wasn't as full as I would like for it to be. But for my child to carry the heartache of a decision that I made, that wasn't going to work. I just couldn't bear that. So when my son left the kitchen, I fell on my knees and I said, "Lord, I've tried so many ways to fix this, and you tell me this time, and I will do it exactly as you instruct." And the very next day, I was driving in the car and I was changing the radio station, and there was a 15-second blip on the radio of the very first class for post-abortion restoration and healing. And so I called that number and I went to the class, and during that time I began to understand who God really was and who I was in Christ, that there was nothing I could do that would make him stop loving me, and there was nothing I could do to make him love me anymore, because it all rested in his son Jesus. And as I began that journey of discovering him, I was finally able to bring this terrible shame and heartache and lay it at the foot of the cross and be lifted up to walk away in forgiveness and freedom. This was something that I wanted to keep a secret. I didn't want anyone to know about it. My silence was a curse to my kids. My living in the darkness and the shame was a curse to my children. But as I began to come into the light and I began to share my story with them, God, in healing me and blessing me, began to pour that blessing into their lives. You can live in shame. Shame is something that Satan uses to make us define ourselves by our sin. God can use guilt to lead us to the cross. And rather than being defined by our sin, we are then defined by our Savior. And everybody's looking for that. He wants us to walk in truth and grace. And that can only happen when our hearts are filled with His perfect love that cast out all shame and that cast out all fear.